Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to take a little look at the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum. That's right, it's time for a cheeky range review. There's been a bit of a gap of these, which was not intentional, but all sorts of weird lockdown shenanigans and nonsense has gone on in this country, and frankly, I keep having to deal with children. And don't get me wrong, I love my children, but Christ, they take a lot of work. Anyway, let's have a look at some lads and lasses that make up the Imperial Guard, starting with the Cadian Command Squad. I really like the Cadian Command Squad. By the way, this is probably going to be ridiculously long, so go and grab a cuppa. It might be split into two parts. We'll see how far we get. If it's absurd, then... but it's fine. So, Cadian Command Squad. I really like this lot, actually. I think this is it holds up. It holds up super well. The faces are pretty well done, with maybe the exception of the lad with the flag. Little bit of a dodgy expression on the mouth there, but he does have a bitching robot arm, so what really can you complain about? Overall, they're solid. They are solid. They do look good. They do hold up pretty well, these lads. Be nice to have some new ones, let's be honest. You know, let's not pretend that these aren't getting on a bit at this point. Be nice to have some fresh, but overall they still look pretty decent. Yeah, I do like them. The scars on the plasma gunner are very nicely done as well. I do like that. That is a lad who has seen some action, to say the least. Yeah, solid start. Now, unfortunately, the Katachan Command Squad has maybe not aged quite as well, although I think they are older, are they not? If my dates are correct. They may not be correct. Don't quote me on that. They look okay. They look alright, but they definitely, yeah, they just look older. They just look older. The level of detail doesn't seem to be quite the same, although it could be that actually these are slightly more detailed in terms of the amount of muscles and bare flesh on show. But in that respect, they're not quite as well done as perhaps more recent entries into that sort of physique. They're not bad. Yeah, they look alright. They look okay. I do like the flag. I have to say the flag is really nicely done on this one. To hell with painting it. Absolutely not interested in that at all. Looks like an absolute nightmare to paint. But I think they do just feel that little bit more aged. Even it's weird, I think, because a lot of the equipment is the same. Like the las guns look the same and the communications equipment look the same, but the lads that they're attached to, when it comes to the arms and chests especially, they just don't quite hold up as well. It's not like really bad. They don't look terrible, but it's almost like the extra detail lets them down slightly in a way. I think also these lads are painted a little bit better. The paint jobs are a little more modern on the Cadian compared to the Katachan, I think, which does make a difference. Now, onto the Katachan Jungle Fighter Squad. These definitely are looking a bit ancient at this point. They're definitely not looking great. I mean, the face on the sergeant is just... it's just not good. I'd love to get new Katachan would be... New Katachan and Cadians would be great, because there's so much potential, especially now. Like the level of detail and the overall models are better now, flat out better in most cases. And a reimagining of these would be really nice. I know we've had a few different new Katachans. Like the new Slime Arbo really shows how much things have come along, and an entire Katachan squad and command squad in that style would be perfect. It would be absolutely perfect. Yeah, and they're not terrible, but they are getting on a bit at this stage. The actual Cadians still look alright. It gets on my nerves though that this is the only thing in this range which has been photographed like this, and it bugs me no end. It's showing 5 lads, even though you get 10. Like if you scroll down, because I did check this set includes 10 guardsmen, includes 5 leg variants, 7 head variants, 10 lasguns, etc, etc. But why have this as the only thing which has got a bit of a backdrop on it? They've erased the bases, I just don't get it. I don't understand why this one unit has got this kind of scenic photo. Also, my god, the inefficiency of the sprue. It's just crushing. That is not a good sprue. That is... That is an old as hell sprue. It's just not quite doing it, is it? Just not quite doing it. Same goes for Steel Legion. Steel Legion still look pretty decent. I do like the overall aesthetic of Steel Legion, along with Deathcore of Krieg, because of course you do. But just that little bit of extra care and attention, like the hands. Weirdly, hands is a big thing. It feels like a lot of these models, it was when hands and feet were still significantly bigger than they would be. It's just a scale thing. But it feels like they've managed to cut down on that. It feels like they've managed to cram in more detail into smaller spaces. And so things like hands and feet would be that little bit more proportional to the body, which makes quite a bit of difference as to how these things look. Overall, the Steel Legion do look decent, but it's almost like things are slightly rougher on models of this age. Like, they still have the detail. They still look good, but it's just not quite as fine as the more recent stuff that we see from Games Workshop. So again, they still look pretty decent to my eye, but I'd love to see newer ones. Like, the difference between Steel Legion and Deathcore is pretty significant. Like, I know it's grossly simplifying it to say they have a similar aesthetic because they have basically long coats and death masks and gas masks, but you get what I mean. There's like at least a slight similarity to them. And the Deathcore just look that much better because they are that much newer. And of course the material will make a difference because these are, I believe, still not fine cast, but fine cast, whereas the Forge World stuff has generally been quite a bit better in terms of overall quality than fine cast ever was. So yeah, they still look good, but come on, give us an update. Just give us an update. I feel like that's going to be an oft-repeated phrase for this particular range review, I'm afraid. But only because I want God to get stuff, along with every Xenos race that Games Workshop has. Now here we get to something a bit more recent in the form of the Tempest Science Command Squad, and you can already see that there are just improvements. This is a more recent kit. These are more recently sculpted models. It's little things like the cloth just looks that much better. The armour segments just look that little bit better. The edges are more defined. They're more sharp. The faces are a vast improvement over all of the previous ones that we've seen. They just have that extra level that the others don't have. The hands are slightly more to the correct size for the scale. It does make a difference. It genuinely does. They look really good, the Tempest Science. My main issue with these guys is they are expensive for what they are. I mean, yeah, 25 quid gets you a box that builds either the normal squad or the command squad, and that is just pretty pricey for how many you need. You know, given that you only get 5 in a box as opposed to the 10 Cadians that you get or the 10 Katachan that you get for less, it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow, to be honest, which is a real shame because these guys do look really good. I mean, the question is, do they look better than Katachan? Which they do not. They look different. They look different. But I would like to see those lads back. I'd take them. I'd take them straight away. Those were solid models, and it makes me sad that they're gone. These lads are fine, don't get me wrong. I do like them, but it's just not quite the same, is it? It's just not quite the same. But this is still a solid kit, and these are solid-looking models. I think they did a good job with these. And yeah, the main squad of them, they do look good. They are really nicely done. I like the helmets a lot on these. There's like a really unique feel to these guys. They just, yeah, they've done a good job with them. It just makes me want to see this kind of like level of care on Cadians, Katachan, Steel Legion. I'd love to see all the different regiments come back in plastic, like properly redone. How likely that is, I don't know. Probably not all that likely, but you know, you can dream, you can hope. But yeah, they do look solid. The Tempest Science, they're good. They look good. Now on to an absolute mainstay, the Lehman Rust tank. There's a load of these. There's a bunch of different variants, but the two ones that, well, I say the two ones, there are a bunch of different variants of them. You can load them out with plasma, with Demarger cannons, battle cannons, las cannon, heavy bolter, got heavy flamers, multi-melter as well. There's like a whole bunch of different loadouts you can have. There's only 2 kits though, so you've got this one, which, yeah, it's got the demolisher and the battle cannon. Is the Punisher as well on here? No, it's not, is it? That must be in this one, I guess? No, this is... Yeah, okay. So yeah, you've got the Executioner and the Punisher as well. So there's a whole bunch of different variants. These tanks are not... They're like... I was going to say they are not functional. They look like they've got absolutely no usable suspension whatsoever, so that might not be far from the truth. But this is one of those instances where they just don't care. Just don't care how actually effective they would be. They are absolutely iconic vehicles. They look great. They look so good. They look like almost like rustic, borderline agricultural. I love these tanks. There's just, yeah, they just look so... They just look so good. They just look so good. Even though they do look too old to be in use. Like, given that it's a sci-fi universe, these do not look like sci-fi tanks. They just look like tanks. And old tanks at that. Old tanks at that. But that's part of the charm. It's part of what makes them so visually interesting. The fact there's so many different variants as well, so you can go just basic. This is a tank with a main gun. You don't even have to put side sponsons on it if you don't want to. Those are optional extras. You could literally just have a main gun and a machine gun, and that'd be it. But on the other end of the scale, you can chuck massive plasma cannons on them. I just, the versatility of it, I love it. I love these. Absolutely love them. I've put a few of these together in my day, which has not always been a fun experience, to be honest. The assembly of them, it's okay. It's not the smoothest. It's not the smoothest at all, but I just find myself not caring because I like them that much. It's one of those models where you can look at multiple points where you get horrendous panel gaps and actually trying to... I mean, it's the same with a lot of Games Workshop tanks, to be fair. There are very few tanks that Games Workshop do, especially on like the Imperium front particularly, where you don't end up with like some sort of gap somewhere unless you've got it, wrapped in a million elastic bands or just get that perfect fit just right, which I never do. I mean, I've been putting these models together for I don't know how many years at this point, and I always end up with at least one gap on whatever vehicle I'm putting together, and there's nothing I can do about it. But at the same time, they just... Yeah, like, I don't want to overuse the word iconic, but I just don't care. When it comes to putting together Lehman Rust, I just don't care. They just... It's worth it in the end. It's worth it in the end every single time. Same thing for the Baneblade, actually, which we will get to. Now, I've never put together a Sentinel. I feel like it's something that should be fixed. Because I love the Sentinel. Especially, there's just something about them. The fully armoured up version, I have to admit, is my favourite. Especially because they've got the little windscreen wipers there on the windows on the front. I don't know. I love that those are there. Not really sure why. I don't know how much difference that would make. In fact, the windows are so small that I feel like the wipers take up a significant chunk of your real estate there. But who cares? Who cares? It's just a cool looking vehicle. Your standard non-armoured Sentinel, it still looks decent. Again, it has such a okay, we need a fast walker. What have we got? Well, we've got this piece of crap on legs. What do you want to do? Stick a gun to it? Like, that's the whole feel of this stuff. I just love it. I just love it so much. Yeah, I I've always liked the Sentinel. I should just get one. Just for the hell of it. Just to have a Sentinel. That would be fun. I want to paint it. The Basilisk. Now, the Basilisk, I have a super fun spot for the Basilisk. I do, well, upstairs in the loft, I think I've still got a Basilisk. For my Iron Warriors, never put a Basilisk together for any Imperial Guard stuff. I've assembled, when I said before, I've assembled a few different tanks and stuff. It's mostly been for friends who hate building, because I quite like building. But the Basilisk, I can't help but still love it all these years later, because it was just a menace. A lot of the love I have for this kit is down to nostalgia and very little else. It is getting on a bit now. It still looks fine. It still looks okay, but it just looking at it takes me back to firing Earthshaker shells at other people's games when it had 128-inch range. I can't remember what it's got now. It might still be the same, thinking about it. But yeah, I loved that. I loved my Basilisk. It was so much fun. All painted up horribly in Iron Warriors colours with the thickest paint you've ever seen in your life. Because I was a wee lad and an idiot and didn't know how to paint anything. I mean, that's only changed recently, to be fair. Not the wee lad bit, the not knowing how to paint. I'm still an idiot, so that still applies. But yeah, I can't help but love the Basilisk. It's so good. I will say I've got a bit of a fondness for all of the Chimera-based vehicles, like the Wyvern. I mean, there's something about that particular hull, the right word? There's something about that particular chassis, shall we say? That's probably the right word, isn't it? Hull, chassis, one of the two. No, hull's for boats. Whatever. I just like the platform. Again, it just doesn't look. It does not look new enough to be in service in like a sci-fi universe of, you know, dedicated space travel and the like. You got these knackered old vehicles pottering around, making up a significant chunk of the Imperium's military might. I love it. I love the look of them. The Deathstrike is by far the most hilarious of the of the Chimera based vehicles. I don't know what the current rules are for this, to be fair, but if I remember correctly, it's essentially an ICBM that for some reason you deploy on the battlefield that has a ludicrous top range, and you can't even fire it until several turns in, and you have to roll for it every time anyway. It's just ridiculous. It's why. This is one of those ones where I'm like, I don't even know why they made this. Really, like I don't know why that. I don't know who sat there and thought. No, I mean no. Someone probably sat there and thought this would be pretty funny. And in fairness, they are 100% correct. It is pretty funny, and I 100% approve of it. But it's just such a weird concept of, yeah, let's just bring the massive long-range missile onto the battlefield with us. Why not? We could fire it from all the way back there, but no. Bring it onto the front lines, let's go. Ludicrous, absurd, brilliant. The Manticore, of course, very similar to the Deathstrike. Well, I say very similar. It's the same chassis, but it's got multiple missiles attached to it, which is, again, very similar. Again, it looks good. I like it. It's hard not to like it. These all look decent. I will say I do like the profile of the Manticore. Looks very threatening, very, very low to the ground somehow, even though it's the same height as all the others. In terms of like how low to the ground it is, I think it's because of the shape of the like the missile rack on the top there. It just looks threatening. Somehow it looks more threatening than the Deathstrike, which will probably get me crucified by certain people, but it's fine. Now the Taurox, I have no. This is a vehicle that I cannot reconcile this vehicle with myself. I can't tell whether I like it or whether I dislike it. I think I like bits of it. I like bits of it, but I don't like other bits of it. It's okay. It's all right. It's a bit weird. Now there is there's a few things. Firstly, it having the tracked, it being tracked and not wheeled, I don't mind that, but I would have preferred if it had like just tracks that went the length of the body, like the Lehman Rust, the Baneblade, the Chimera. I would have preferred that a lot, to be honest. And that it's never looked quite right to me, the way that it's laid out. And by far the biggest offender for me with this vehicle is the autocannons on the side. It looks like they were just slapped on. It makes way more sense when they're on the turret on the top. That's fine. Any of the weapons that attach to the turret on the top, because there is another variant of this that I think, is it just the Militarum Tempesters have access to the other version? But the stuff that goes on the turrets, no problem with that. Fine, carry on. But the ones that are just stuck on the side of the vehicle, there's no indication there that they can aim independently, so they just fire forwards no matter where this thing's facing, and it just does not look right. It doesn't look sensible. It doesn't look like it would work. And I know there's a lot of 40k stuff that you could look at and go, well, that doesn't really look like it would work, in fairness. But this feels like an egregious example of that, where It's not aesthetically pleasing. It's not interesting. It's just someone slapped a gun on the side of this thing and then left it to it, which just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't do it for me. Just doesn't do it for me at all. The overall design of this I really like, but it's, yeah, the track choice and the sticking of autocannons to the side panels is just not quite there for me. Yeah, I mean, especially if you look at it from that top-down view, they just don't look like they would do very much. Unless you happen to be standing slightly to the left or right of the centre of the truck as it was coming straight for you without hitting any sort of obstacle or bouncing or being moved in any way. It's just not great. It's just not great. By contrast, this thing is a transport fit for the gods. Can't argue with this, lad. Solid. Absolutely solid. And I know what you're going to say. Surely those lasguns, like the lasguns on the side, also not going to do much. Probably not. Probably not. But it still looks more feasible to me. Still looks more feasible. And I know that, like, you know, there is like a heavy bolter sticking out the front of this, and there's a heavy bolter on the front of the Lehman Rust, but those have got that kind of covering over it that makes it look like it can turn to the side slightly, like it can do something. The forward gun on older tanks, there was still some maneuverability there. They weren't just plastered to it and left to it, and it just looks more feasible. Looks more feasible by far. Yeah, I much prefer the way they've done it on the Chimera. It just looks better to me. Now, a little bit of break from vehicles, because I wanted to make sure that I actually covered these lads, because these are great models. I think sometimes it's easy to forget that these are even in the Astra Militarum section, but they're great models. They look really, really good. They've held up really well. They're getting on a bit now. I mean, these are both resin models. And I know we have had a new Crusader model out of... Oh, which box game was it? There was some box game that had a new Crusader model. Was it? Was it Blackstone Fortress? No, it wasn't Blackstone, was it? It was the other one. It was the one that had the Galapox infected and the Rogue Traders. Eleusidian Starstriders, that's it. I'm sure they had a Crusader or something going on there. But the thing is, these still look really, really good. They still hold up. They still hold up. Can't get a full 360-degree view of these because they are old enough that is not a feature for these ones. But yeah, I still really like them. I still like them a lot. The Hydra was supposed to be a bit earlier on. I'll have to try and remember to reorganise this in the edit. Again, I like it. I like it. How could I not? How could I not? It's a Chimera chassis vehicle. Basically, just the vehicles for the Imperial Guard are quality for the most part. Even the Taurox I do like, just not with the gun strapped to the side. It's fine, the rest of it, and you know, if you want to, you can always replace the tracks with wheels. There's a few companies that do kits for that, which I'd be very tempted to do. Or do what I've seen a few people do, which is slam a Chimera and a Taurox together. So the Chimera is using the Taurox is using the Chimera's tracks, which looks pretty good, actually. I do like that. But yeah, Hydra, all good. Your normal Sentinel there, we've already had a look at this lad. The Hellhound, of course, is great. I do have to admit, I think I kind of prefer the Forge World version that's got the massive tank exposed on the back, or at least more exposed on the back. But it's still a solid, good-looking vehicle. Can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with them. The Valkyrie is also a solid vehicle. It looks absolutely class, the Valkyrie. It's one of my favourite 40k aircraft by far. It strikes a really nice balance of kind of looking a bit futuristic, but also looking quite grounded in what you might expect something from like around now to kind of look like, a bit anyway. But it fits in with the rest of the Imperial Guard stuff, but it just looks that little bit more sci-fi, but not so much so that it doesn't fit in with everything else. It's just a really nice looking aircraft. I really do like these. I think they did a great job with these. Especially with the, I think is that a decal on there? A transfer even? Decal. I think that's a transfer on the wings, isn't it? Do you get that in the kit? Ooh. Oh, I've never put one of these together. I might. This is bad for me. This is this is like getting dodgy. This is getting risky. I'm not sure I like it. Ah, okay. So we're onto the Bane blades, the hammer Bane blade swords. We're onto the massive tanks, which means we're about halfway through the range. So what we will do is we will call it there for today, because that would make the video about an hour long by the time we get to the end of it, and we'll split it into two, but we will continue this before the end of the week. Part 2 will be out. I'll try and get it done for either tomorrow or Friday. At the very latest, it can be a cheeky Saturday release, and we'll go straight into the massive tanks. Spoiler alert, they're all class. So join me for the second half. I'd forgotten how big this range was until I started doing this video. I genuinely had. I was going through the Games Workshop site, and I was opening all the different models and stuff, and I was going along. I was like, I forgot that there's so much stuff in here. It's not like Space Marine big. It's not stupid. The thing is, there's a lot in here, but it's all old. Is the main thing. With the exception of like Slime Arbo and like one other thing, Severina Rain, a lot of this stuff is not new at all. It is it's getting up there in terms of age. But I think it's easy to forget how big the range is when so much of it is single characters and so much of it is just, it's just getting on a little bit. But yeah, we will go through and do a part 2 to this so that it's not an absurdly long video, because that tends to mess the channel up for a little bit, and I'd prefer not to do that if I can get away with it. So yeah, join me again for part 2 of the Imperial Guard range review. Let me know what we've seen so far is your favourite, which is the thing that stands out to you the most, the thing you have the most fond memories of, and have you managed to stick a Lehman Rust together without getting at least a little bit of panel gap somewhere? Because if so, well, you're doing better than me. Let me know what you think of the range in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. As always, there's an affiliate link in the description for Element Gaming, which you can use to support the channel if you would like. I leave it in your capable hands. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.